on the record and for attribution. With the signing of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law by President Biden, Reclamation takes on a new opportunity to invest in our infrastructure and benefit the American public for the next generation. Since our last update in January, the Bureau of Reclamation has been hyper-focused on deliberately implementing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This information session is designed to update you on our progress and address your questions. We'll provide updates today about authorization of appropriations, critical maintenance and aging infrastructure, and the status of funding opportunities. We plan on addressing as many questions as possible during the question and answer period. And updated information about Reclamation's implementation of the law is always available at usbr.gov/BIL, B-I-L. And you may also email your questions or comments to usbr.bill@usbr.gov, and we'll work to address your questions. We also have a growing list of frequently asked questions, and we hope that that's a helpful resource. We remain committed to transparency throughout this process and appreciate your support of this historic opportunity to improve our nation's water infrastructure. It is now my honor to welcome Acting Commissioner David Palumbo for opening remarks. Acting Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Rob, and happy Earth Day as well to everybody. Commissioner Tootin sends you all her regards and is really looking forward to next engagements with you all. Across the West, communities are facing historic drought, and it's been daunting. But Reclamation and the department are fortunately in a position to respond with financial resources, operational flexibilities, and technical assistance, and are very fortunate to have strong partnerships and sovereign nation-to-nation relationships with tribes. Basin by basin, Reclamation is engaged in actions to mitigate for the impacts of persistent and severe dry hydrology, to promote water security, drought resilience, and climate change adaptation. We scheduled this meeting today to update you on how we intend to continue these efforts and leverage regular appropriations, including those in the President's FY 2023 budget request, with resources in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to build a more resilient Western landscape. This meeting is a continuation of the BIL dialogue begun in December of 2021, continuing through this spring. The infrastructure law provides a total of $8.3 billion under Title IX Western Water Infrastructure to the Bureau of Reclamation. This funding will supplement and complement the funding requested in the FY 2023 budget for Reclamation's programs. We have set about plugging in BIL monies to the programs and projects Congress enumerated in the statute. Moreover, Reclamation is committed to collaborative efforts to ensure BIL investments reflect the administration's priorities. This includes investing public dollars efficiently, working to avoid waste, and focusing on measurable outcomes for the American people. Priorities also include investing in public dollars equitably and environmental justice, improving job opportunities, and delivering outcomes for the American people. We have posted a public-facing Bipartisan Infrastructure Law website describing the implementation approach. We've included our initial FY 2022 BIL spend plan on the site to provide as much detail as possible, as well as links to the many BIL-related funding opportunities that are rolling out this year. The spend plan, which we submitted to Congress on January 14th and have supplemented since, is for fiscal year 2022 dollars, allocations authorized in the law. It represents a blueprint for how Reclamation will invest the $1.66 billion annual allocation. Reclamation also posted its FY 2023 BIL spend plan on March 29th. It enumerates how the second $1.66 billion in appropriations is set to be allocated across various programs. As described by Assistant Secretary for Water and Science Tanya Trujillo, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is the largest investment in the resilience of physical and natural systems in American history. Reclamation is proud and honored to play a fundamental role in executing this extraordinary opportunity to improve our infrastructure while promoting job creation and equity. We hope that today's update briefing builds on the information we've communicated previously and gives you a solid understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing it, when it's happening, and how our stakeholder community is involved. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Our BIL program staff will walk you through a presentation and then answer any questions. Thanks again for letting me kick things off, and back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Acting Commissioner Palumbo. We'll now receive an update on our FY23 budget, and it's my privilege to introduce Reclamation's Director of Program and Budget, Mr. Bob Wolf.
Okay, thanks very much, Rob, and welcome everyone. I'm just going to provide a very high-level overview of the 2023 President's Budget Request. And of course, it provides a solid foundation on which for the Budget Infrastructure Law to make that generational change in our infrastructure and looking forward as a reclamation entity and as a nation. This slide is just simply the mission statement for the Bureau of Reclamation, so it will be posted on the slide. I won't bother to read that, but go to the next slide, please, Peter. So this is the 2023 President's Budget for the Water and Related Resources account. That's our primary account. It covers planning, design, construction, operation and maintenance, environmental and biological opinion activities, land resource management, a full range of activities across the West. So that's close to $1.3 billion in 2023. The policy administration account covers salaries, policy development, those kind of things across the Commissioner's Office and Reclamation. And it's non-reimbursable money, which does not get charged to reclamation contractors or constituents, as much of our program is. So it's a very valuable source of money to carry out those activities. There are two special accounts for California programs, the California Bay Delta program and the Central Valley Project Restoration Fund. In the Central Valley Project Restoration Fund, its source of revenue and expenditures is from collections from water and power customers, which offset the appropriation. What I wanted to point out on this slide is that in all of the budget documents for the administration, for the department, and for reclamation, this 2022 annualized CR column, which was based off 2021 enacted, is published in those documents. When we went to print, the 2022 enacted had not yet occurred. So we've added a column here that's not in those documents for the actual 2022 enacted appropriations by Congress. And two things I will point out with respect to the water and related resources in particular is it's significantly higher than the 2023 President's budget, but there are two very significant factors. One of them is it was $210 million in supplemental appropriations in the first continuing resolution back on October 1st. $10 million was to cover fire costs that had been incurred and address those. And $200 million was specific to drought, emergency drought response. So that is, of course, not carried forward into the 2023 President's budget, but it's no year funds that is being put to very valuable use this year. The second major factor is Indian water rights settlements. There's a separate provision in BIL, which is not the focus of today's discussion, but $2.5 billion in an Indian water rights settlement completion fund. It's actually in the Bureau of Indian Affairs is where it is housed, but it is for the Secretary's use for water rights settlement activities for both BIA and Reclamation for settlements that were authorized at the time BIL passed. So that's a very significant amount of money that is intended to complete all of those active settlements, the ones that were enacted by that date. One thing I will point out is that there's a proposal in the 2023 President's budget for $340 million over 10 years to cover operation and maintenance activities on completed settlements for 4 individual settlements. And that's in recognition that those activities will continue well beyond the BIL funding and are an ongoing responsibility of Reclamation that new proposal is intended to cover. Okay, next slide, please. These are just factors that were taken into consideration in development of the budget and establishing our priorities. So infrastructure is obviously a key to our program, maintaining and modernizing infrastructure, and that includes dam safety. Dam safety, we had almost a doubling of the dam safety program of a $100 million increase in 22 that Congress concurred in and included in the final enacted level, and that continues into the 2023 President's budget. Creating resilience through responding to drought and climate is obviously critical in this environment that we're in these days. We're supporting underserved communities and tribal programs, and even though water rights settlements are no longer part of the annual discretionary request of reclamation, there are many programs that benefit tribes like rural water, a lot of environmental things, and then of course tribes are eligible for consideration many reclamation programs, including WaterSMART programs, for example. Conserving natural resources and meeting our environmental responsibilities and commitments is a key factor. And then finally, using science and research to inform decision-making is critically important to make sure we make the best use of our available funds with the best outcomes. And the next slide is a pie chart, which just provides a picture of our overall budget request. And the water and related resources is a comprehensive account west-wide. So that makes up the predominant piece of the pie chart. And those other two, California special accounts and policy administration, are much smaller pieces of the pie as shown here. And finally, there's another pie chart which just breaks down the water and related resources account into 5 program activities. So water, energy, management, and development is on the upper right. That's a little over a quarter of the proposal. Land management is a very small amount, about 4%. Fish and wildlife management, 16%. So that right-hand side, when you get to House and Senate conference reports from the Appropriation Committee, they call that resource management and development for those 3 categories, and that's slightly less than half of the overall request. On the left-hand side, we have facility operations and facility maintenance and rehabilitation. That makes up a little over half of the request. And there's a second column in those congressional reports just called facility OM&R. They do a shorthand version of it. So that just gives you a high-level overview of the 2023 budget. I will stay on if there's any questions at the end and appreciate the opportunity to discuss the budget. Back to you, Rob. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Really appreciate that update. We'll now receive an update on the implementation for the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and I'm privileged to introduce Acting Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Mr. Matt Maucieri, and Deputy Director for Program and Budget, Ms. Beth Hughes-Brown.
Thanks, Rob, and good afternoon. Thanks, Rob, and good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those of you on Pacific time zone. My name again is Matt Maucieri. I work in the operations group at Reclamation, and together with Beth Hughes-Brown, we'll go through the next roughly 24 slides before we get to the question and answer session. This slide just gives you a general overview of the Reclamation's strategic objectives that we're following in implementing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. You'll recognize some of that language from executive orders and from some of our budget documents. We're working to increase water reliability and resilience, support racial and economic equity, of course, modernize our infrastructure, big part of the BIL for us, and enhancing water conservation and ecosystem restoration and climate resilience. For the next couple slides, I'll hand it over to Beth Hughes-Brown.
Hi there. So the slide you're looking at now is kind of the perfect example of many of the goals that we have and the way we are implementing the BIL in the Bureau of Reclamation. This is for the Rural Water Project program. First of all, we want to thank those of you who are our stakeholders, but also are people who advocated for this funding for rural water and other programs. We really appreciate it. It puts us in the wonderful position of being able to administer this. And as I said, rural water is a great example of it. It accelerates because of the additional funding from the BIL. It accelerates the completion of the work that we've been trying to complete for a long, long time. It's instead of taking multiple additional decades, it's going to take a few years, and it puts us in a totally different position. If you look at the column that starts in 2021 there, and you see that there's $8 million in that year that we got enacted. And now in 2022, you'll see the third to the last column, you see how much went into it from the BIL this year, $420 million. You can see that we are vastly accelerating the work we're doing there. That's going to put us in a position where people who did not have potable water in their own homes will sooner, much sooner than we originally had planned. And that's what's the transformative part of this. People who did not have water will. Huge difference. This also illustrates the confluence of working with discretionary or appropriated dollars that we get from Congress. The two columns that you see, 21 and 22, that say enacted, are the appropriated dollars, plus the infrastructure law, and you see two columns there that say that as well. So we are working very closely with our appropriators to make sure that we get what we need when we need it. They are partnering with us, and it's a great partnership. We're very grateful. Finally, a very important part of this is the way we are rolling out the money for the BIL is we're putting it where we have what we call capability. We're putting it where we can spend it. And the BIL in the rural water program, there are existing projects. They are ongoing. We know what we're doing with them. The work has already begun, and we were able to put the money where we needed it and make a difference very soon, which leads us to the next slide, please, Peter. The way we rolled this out, $8.3 billion is provided in equal increments over 5 years. That's $1.66 billion per year. We did not allocate it using proration, saying we would take the same percentage of each of those programs. The reason for it, some of the programs already existed. They were up and running. We knew what we needed. We knew where we needed it. We knew how much. For example, rural water. Others are just being built. They are brand new programs. We are in the process right now of building those programs, of designing those programs, of making the criteria and so on. So we used higher percentages of allocations based on capability in the near term. Cost savings, because if you have indexing on some of these very large projects and it takes 30 years to build, it's going to cost a lot more. And finally, whether the new program is ready for administration. And Matt will tell us a lot more about that, where each of these programs are in terms of their readiness to actually spend the money. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Beth. This next slide will be familiar to a lot of you. We've used it on our website and we use it in previous briefings. It's mainly just to simplify on the left-hand side all the main dozen or so program areas that we got funding for in the BIL. And then the center column tell you how we're doing it, which we'll get into a little bit more deeply in the succeeding slides. And lastly, when that's happening. In general, the main takeaway from this slide is some of the activities are being funded through application periods, and some of it is internal formulation, where reclamation comes up with the project allocations administratively. And for a little bit more detail on that, we will go to the next slide. Okay, so as you know, reclamation got about $8.3 billion in its BIL appropriation, and the way in which we're administering those funds, about 2/3 of those funds are going to be distributed pursuant to some kind of application process. In that blue slice there on the upper right-hand corner of the pie chart, those are notice of funding opportunities, or NOFOs. Funding opportunities for programs like water conservation, water use efficiency, the things in WaterSMART that many of you are accustomed to reclamation funding year after year. And BIL appropriates hundreds of millions of dollars for those familiar grant programs. The next big slice of the pie, the orange section, that is for what we're calling hybrid internal-external application processes. It corresponds to the aging infrastructure part of the BIL, also called the critical maintenance or XM parts of the BIL. That is getting distributed pursuant to a hybrid application process where reclamation actually physically gets in contact with its operating partners to come up with a funding mix and come up with projects for reclamation-owned infrastructure. This funding is targeted to reclamation-owned infrastructure. And of course, many of you know about 2/3 of reclamation's infrastructure is operated by others, local irrigation and water districts who actually operate the federally owned infrastructure. So that funding is distributed pursuant to those relationships we have with our operating partners and an application period or an application process that is actually prescribed in the statute. Last third of this pie, the gray area, internally formulated allocations to projects, rural water projects, predominantly dam safety projects where reclamation actually comes up with the funding allocation for those specific project areas. So the 2/3 figure, we say that a lot because we want it to be known that there's some kind of application or democratic process that is part of coming up with that funding mix. And so with that, you have the time that is built into actually posting funding opportunities, collecting those applications, doing the ranking, and then coming up with the awards. On the next slide, we'll get into that a little bit from a little bit different perspective. Let's skip forward to the next one. So what has transpired since the BIL was signed on November 15th of 2021? We've gone through about 7 different funding opportunity periods. The first one you see listed there is the Aging Infrastructure or XM. That closed in end of January, and then we moved into where we're at now, which is the review of those applications. We've done several funding opportunities under the traditional WaterSMART program that got BIL funding. And as we move into the rest of the year and the open funding opportunities happening now, we have a couple for small scale water efficiency and drought resiliency. And those, as you see, are open until end of April and middle of June. Still to come for the remaining months of 2022, we have water and energy efficiency grants with BIL money, environmental water resources, and several others that are coming. The last 2 I want to flag there, numbers 5 and 6, totally new programs. Small scale water storage was authorized and funded in the BIL. Didn't have this program as it's currently conceived in there. It's in section 40903 of the BIL. And then number 6 there, aquatic ecosystem, totally new program that was authorized by Congress in December of 2020 and then funded pretty generously in the BIL. So those, we're standing up the program criteria for those, and we will move toward funding opportunity as we go through the rest of 2022 into 2023. On the next slide, we'll get a little bit deeper into that. So if you could advance forward to the next one. Back to you, Beth, for these.
So here's what we've been doing with our time. We started back in December. Some of you were on some of those early briefings that we did. We did a couple in December and one in January. Based on we broke the programs into thirds and did the easy ones first and the ones where we did not quite know exactly what we were going to say in January. So all of you had a chance to participate in those, and some of you perhaps already have. So I'm going to point out the bottom of this list before I go on, because here you are again. It's 4/22, and here you are getting the next quarterly briefing. On 12/16, we did our very first aging infrastructure application period, opened as of that date. It closed about a month and a half after that. And we're in a different process, a different part of the process right now where we are doing our due diligence to review each and every one of those applications. We have a team, a multi-dimensional team doing all kinds of review of that. They've done a fantastic job, and we got very good applications. The next one was our very first spend plan, the FY22 spend plan, which had to be 60 days after enactment of the BIL, and it was on time, and it was released on our website. We started with funding opportunities on the same day. The first one was for recycling and desal. And then later in January, we did tribal consultations on the BIL with the DOI. I've never been to one of those before. It was very impressive and an honor to be part of that. And we got a lot of feedback from those consultations. The next one we did was a release of the information having to do with allocating from the completion fund. That's a different part of the BIL that Bob referred to earlier. And that was released at the same time as the allocations from the Reclamation Water Settlement Fund were released on February 22nd. Again, that's on our website as well. Funding opportunity after that for small scale water efficiency projects. One after that for, the next one is an addendum. We're calling allocations that are coming from the program level down to the project level. An addendum where in our initial spend plan, we knew how much the program was going to get, but we did not yet have it allocated to the projects. So each time we did allocate it down further, we call it an addendum to the original spend plan. So there are two of them already on our website. The first one was for dam safety, and the second one, which you'll see below there, for raw water that went out on 3/31. Again, all of them are on our website. Did a funding opportunity for drought resiliency projects, and we did a and here you are today. I'm sorry, I missed the FY23 bill spend plan, which was only 2.5 months after the first one. So that was an adventure, but it is also on our website. You're welcome to take a look at any of those on our website. And next slide, please. We have a number of takeaways here. And the first thing before I actually tell you what's on the slide, of course you can read it yourself, is please take a look at the pictures. They are amazing. They are pictures of our ongoing projects right now. And this is where the money that all of us, that you work so hard to get, and we're working so hard to appropriately disperse and make the work happen. Those are the pictures of what it is you want and we want as well. So the bill funding for the FY22 has now been allocated to all of the program areas, as I mentioned before, and now we're bringing it down to the project area level. Next slide, please. Other major bill program allocations, aging infrastructure. As Matt referred to, this is a very big program, and this is going to be announced at the project level very soon, probably the first week in May. And each and every time we bring something down from program to project, we will be doing it throughout fiscal 22 and in subsequent years. I just want to point out one other thing about those opportunities, funding opportunity announcements. They are accelerated in this fiscal year. We owe a lot to the folks who are doing that. And that's a lot of people, and many of them are on this call. They have accelerated them this year and a marvel of efficiency, but we're very grateful to them. Next slide, please. The project allocations, such as rural water and dam safety, as I mentioned, have also been announced, naming the individual project allocations. You actually saw a chart in the beginning slide on that topic. Next slide, please. And beginning in December 2021, in the first 6 months, we've published funding opportunities to allocate more than $500 million in bill funding. That excludes the funding being allocated for non-competitive programs like rural water and dam safety. That's pretty impressive. Next slide, please. And now we'll go back to Matt, please.
Thanks, Beth. So this slide, not super scientific, just meant to give you a sense of the geographic breadth of the reclamation construction program. BIL funding is getting plugged into many of these projects and programs. And so this is just a sense of the higher profile projects, the bigger projects that are above $20 million. Obviously, this map is going to change a lot as we move through time, as it does every year. But just wanted to put this one up there to give you a sense of the breadth and scope of the reclamation construction program. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned before that we were going to get a little bit deeper into the life cycle of the projects, or the programs, sorry, that are being funded with BIL. This chart it's not super scientific either. It's just meant to give you a sense of the existing WaterSMART grant programs into which BIL funding will be merged in with existing prior year appropriations. So Title 16 is the Water Recycling Authority that we have. It funds WIN Act authorized projects as well as legacy previously authorized water recycling projects. You can see there we've got a funding opportunity out already, and that closed. And so now we're in the blue section where we're reviewing those received applications. Same for that third program there, desalination. And we're going to post this presentation on our website so you can look at it at your leisure. But generally, you see we're tracking in time as we move through the plugging in of BIL money to existing programs and stand up new ones, as we'll get into on the succeeding slide. But all of these on this particular slide are existing programs that we have in there that we're plugging BIL funding into. Next slide, please. So this is smaller. These are brand new programs that we will be plugging BIL money into. Small storage, multi-benefit projects, aquatic ecosystem projects, and large-scale water recycling. All of these have their origins either in the BIL or in an authorization that just got enacted within about the last year and a half, particularly the aquatic ecosystem that was authorized in December 2020. These other ones are, I think, unique to the BIL. And as you can see, we're formulating and developing those programs in advance of getting the criteria that we'll use in implementing those programs, getting that out for public comment. That's usually followed by a funding opportunity, which is in turn followed by the rating process. For small storage, just want to flag that one. The criteria that we're going to use to run that program, we posted as a reclamation manual release on our website. It's just basically how we will assess the feasibility of these small programs. The others are trailing behind, and there'll be milestones for those coming as we move through the rest of calendar 2022 into 2023. Next slide, please. Okay, so last use of this display method for these. Other new programs that are not grant are the Aging Infrastructure Account, relatively new authority that we have to fund programs through an account or fund projects through an account. We're very close to announcing how we will allocate to projects the aging infrastructure monies for FY22. We know the dollar value that we're working with, and we're going to name the specific projects that we've received pursuant to the application process. On rural water, we're a little further along. We have named and posted as an addendum that Beth mentioned the actual specific rural water projects that we'll be funding with our BIL monies in fiscal 22. And water storage and conveyance, similar to the aging infrastructure, we're going to be announcing soon what water storage and conveyance projects that we will be funding with our BIL funds in 22 and 23. Next slide, please. This graphic is not super scientific either. It's basically all of those dots are where there have been WaterSMART-funded project awards over the last 10 years, and it's overlain on top of the last drought map that some of you have seen, a drought monitor that's updated every week, just overlaid on top of that. And it's meant to give you a sense of where the money for WaterSMART has gone, and it generally corresponds to where the population base or the applicant base is located in the West. And we've, of course, tracked drought conditions every day at Reclamation. So just a kind of non-scientific slide, just meant to give you some context around how these programs are implemented. Next slide, please. A question that we're asked frequently is, are you coordinating your BIL implementation with other federal agencies? And we absolutely are. We have a lot of contacts at our other natural resources agencies, more than are listed here, but some of the fora that we interact with them with and talk about BIL implementation are the National Drought Resiliency Partnership, the Interagency Working Group. These are fora that have participation by our top leadership at Reclamation and in the Assistant Secretary for Water and Science hallway within the department. We are cognizant of executive orders relative to our BIL implementation or to our work in the water resiliency field. And then we, of course, follow presidential memoranda and tribal consultation guidelines. And lastly, we have program management team members on our leadership team that's implementing the BIL who participate in many of these above groups or staff them in some way, shape, or form. Next slide, please. So this is Matt's final thoughts for this, and then I'm going to hand it back to Beth. Final thoughts is sometimes in meetings, people will say, they'll mention in air quotes, when the BIL money arrives or when BIL starts getting implemented. And we put this slide up because we want to really let it be known BIL is happening now. There's funding opportunities that we've moved through time and had open and close. There are more to come. It's happening now, and it's happening in the form of those funding opportunities. It's happening in the form of internal formulation, dam safety, rural water, and it's happening in the form of these spend plans that we are trying to be as transparent as possible, sending to Congress, posting on our website, and we want to basically let it be known that since so much of reclamation relies on you and our partnerships with tribes and non-federal partners, we think we are poised and positioned for a very successful implementation, and it will be heavily predicated on your participation in the partnerships we have with your organizations. So thank you in advance for your help on that. And that concludes my section of the slides, and I'll hand it back to Beth to wrap us up.
So usually you lead with the headline, and in this case, we're going to end with the headline. Once in a generation changes. The bipartisan infrastructure law is giving us this opportunity to make once in a generation changes. And that's extraordinary. So every successful project, every one that we choose, every one that we implement, will also advance one or more of the priorities that the administration and Congress have set out. They include support to underserved and disadvantaged populations, improved job opportunities for Americans that focus on measurable outcomes for the American people, and continued progress on building resilient infrastructure. There's a drought going on that helps combat the crisis of climate change. So again, we're grateful and we're honored to be a part of this. And thank you very much for your attention today. Back to you, Rob. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to point out one other thing. And Rob, perhaps you can expound on this. If you go back to that slide where, and you don't have to, where we talked about all of our milestones, you'll notice that we've done something every quarter, and we've been able to do this because of our extraordinary partnership with Public Affairs. And Rob is the lead of our Public Affairs. We are delighted to be working with you.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you, Matt. At this time, we'll address your questions. As stated, please raise your hand using the hand icon at the top of the screen and state your name and affiliation when asking a question. The chat is open for this brief, and we also encourage you to submit your questions by sending an email to usbr.bill@usbr.gov. And again, we're committed to addressing as many questions as we can during this limited time today. So with that, let's go to your questions. Who do we have first, Peter?
We're still waiting for questions to come in. If
Okay.
just a reminder to raise your hand if you have a question you'd like to ask. If you dialed in by phone, you can hit *5 to raise your hand.
Thank you. And as Beth mentioned, we have conducted updates about the bill in every quarter of this fiscal year thus far, and we look forward to presenting another one this summer. So more to follow on that, but we're committed to transparency and actively engaging with you to make sure you have the most updated information. So. Okay. Again, the chat is open for this brief, and we encourage you to also submit questions by sending an email to usbr.bill@usbr.gov. And we have a whole group of subject matter experts on today. We were ready for your tough questions. So. Okay. Well, again, we're always available, and we are always very responsive to addressing the questions that you may have. Nothing yet, Peter?
No, nothing yet.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. We'll give it a few more seconds, and then we'll wrap it up. But again, the key takeaway here is that we're always available outside of this forum, and we'll work to update to. Okay. We'll work to address your questions.
We have one question from Brad Perry. Brad, you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on.
Thank you. Brad, we can't hear you. There we go. Thank you, Brad.
You're unmuted. I wonder if
Say something, Brad. Oh no, we don't have you. Okay.
Brad, can you try again? Looks like your microphone's not enabled on your computer there.
Brad, if possible, could you submit your question in the chat? Thank you. And following this session, we'll update our frequently asked questions as well.
So Brad's question is, what specific programs do you anticipate for drinking water and watering stations on tribal lands? Matt?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that. Thanks for that question. A lot, actually. While reclamation isn't traditionally thought of as a drinking water agency, we have, through our WaterSMART program, the ability to assist local drinking water entities. We have a new program for small water storage that may be of interest to drinking water entities. And separate from BIL, but potentially fundable, is additional technical assistance to tribes that we have been funding through regular appropriations for many years now. Through those suite of programs, we have a lot of potential ability to assist tribes with a lot of different type water resources projects, drinking water assets being one of those. Would anyone from any of the program offices or the budget office like to supplement that response?
Yeah, this is Beth. I just have one further follow-up on that. If you send us an email to the address that you see on your screen, we'd be happy to add to what Matt just gave you. And I see Avra is ready to respond as well. And the reason I say that is because there are settlements that are doing a lot as well. We just want to make sure we fully respond to your question. Go ahead, Avra.
Yeah, I can just add that our drought response program does provide cost-shared funding, financial assistance for certain types of projects to help support municipal water supplies. So under our drought resiliency projects, you can invest in a kind of small-scale water storage, small-scale water treatment, new connections and pipes, interties, and other types of infrastructure to help access water sources, especially during times of drought. And then our emergency drought program also provides funding for emergency measures like water hauling and things like that. But the drought resiliency projects is a good place to look for municipal improvement type projects.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We got Brad's microphone working.
Yeah, sorry. I represent the Northwestern Band of Shoshone Nation. We have potable drinking water in our well. We need to get it to where our people can use it. So that's one of our main concerns.
Thank you, Brad.
Brad, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you. Any other hands raised? Okay.
No questions right now.
No?
Rob.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to give it about 30 more seconds, and then we'll wrap it up for today. But again, we're always available. And updated information is always available at usbr.gov/bill. We prioritize making sure that the website is active and updated. Okay.
Rob, I think we're good. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll bring this to a close today, but thank you, Brad, for the very insightful question, and many thanks to all of our subject matter experts. On behalf of the Bureau of Reclamation, thank you for attending today's information session. Updated information is always available at usbr.gov/bill, and that includes recordings of these information sessions. So you had the information sessions there from December and January, and then this information session will be housed there as well. As we mentioned, we're committed to transparency and making sure that we stay engaged with you. And we'll do that. We've done it every quarter in this fiscal year, and we'll continue to do that. So the next time we are planning to hold another update session would be this summer. But again, more to follow. And more importantly, thank you for your partnership and thank you for your support. Your continued support is the only way that we can do this and take advantage of this historic opportunity. So thank you very much. Please take care.